Hello, I'm Matthew Christopher Shepard, Artistic and Executive Director of Te Deum, and I'm eager to spend a little time telling you about our upcoming concert, Carols of Old. I want to give you a little peek behind the curtain as to some of the planning process, what's going to be on the program, and then most importantly, I'm going to have a little interview with our composer in residence, Dr. Keen Southard, and I'm eager for you to get to know him on a sort of a personal level that can happen in this interview, and then musically when you hear his piece at our upcoming concerts. Carols of Old will be Monday and Tuesday, December 15 and 16 at 7 p.m. It's Monday the 15th at St. Mary's, Tuesday the 16th at Village Presbyterian Church, both at 7 p.m. So the background of Carols of Old, my planning that led to this was this desire to look at the history of the English carol. Carols came out of multiple countries, but the English carol was one I especially wanted to take a look at. And so within the sort of this wide range, we have 1,000 years of music represented here because the precursor even to the English carol would have been the Latin carol of what would have been the Catholic Church. So sort of looking, we have over 1,000 years worth of music represented. But then in addition to trying to bring in the history of the Christmas Carol, I also very much wanted to give a narrative arc. So this concert opens with the first section I'm calling Light in the Darkness. And it's sort of this Advent mystery. And so the concert opens with Creator of the Stars of Night, which would have originally been in Latin, ancient unison chant. And you'll hear the choir processing in and sort of surrounding the audience as we open with this chant. And then you'll hear the first of two 15th century English carols sung with very specific medieval English pronunciation. So we're singing the tenors and basses will sing, "There is no rose of switch vertu, there is no rose of such virtue." Again, though, in sort of three-part harmony, which would have been more of a medieval approach, and with this old English pronunciation that will be, I think, which will be charming and brings a new color and a new light to this tune and this beautiful text. And then also throughout the concert, you're going to get your own chance. Our audience is going to get its own chance to sing along. And so this first section ends with "Of the Father's love begotten." Again, what would have been an ancient medieval Latin chant. We'll be singing it together in the English, and it'll be led by our guest organist, Dr. Elisa Bickers, leading all of our audience sing along. Then we move into a section called prophetic longing, and we sort of looking at the ancient voices crying out for both redemption and deliverance. We open with a setting of a local composer's arrangement of "This is the Truth Sent from above." That is Dr. Ian Coleman. We've performed a handful of his pieces over the years. A wonderful local composer. We love doing his music, and this is a beautiful setting he wrote just a couple of years ago. And this is the first time I heard it. I added it to my list of pieces I wanted to make sure we did, and it worked out to get it programmed this year. So excited to share with you Dr. Ian Coleman's "This is the Truth." And then we have this really upbeat, rhythmically intense and exciting "Adam Leahy Bounden." It'd be accompanied by organ. It's going to be a variety of dynamics, but it's going to be on the louder side, and it has sort of this steady, fast rhythmic pulse that just is going to feed the audience with energy, this pulsation. And then this prophetic longing section ends with the also another Advent chant, again translated into English for this concert: O come, Emmanuel." Then we move to the baby Jesus. We move to a section I'm calling the cradle and the manger. This is where heaven sort of comes down to earth. And so we open with What Child Is This? A beautiful contemporary arrangement of What Child Is This? Another organ accompanied a modern setting of The Holly and the Ivy. And then again, the audience gets a chance to sing along on In the Bleak Midwinter, that famous Christina Rossetti poem. Then fourth section out of five, fourth section, we move to focus on Mary, titling it She Who Bears the Light. And so here we hear we start with our second of 15th century carols. The sopranos and altos are singing what we would today say, Hail Mary, full of grace. But in the medieval, we pronounce Hail Mary, full of grace. Hail Mary, full of grace is how they'll be singing it on Hail Mary, full of grace. And then a beautiful late 19th century setting of Ave Maria Stella. This is sung in Latin, and it's a 5th century, I think, text of Mary, the star of the sea, is what this speaks of. And this is a setting by Edvard Grieg. So one of his more famous choral settings. It's spectacularly both simple and pristine, but also rich and full of romantic harmonies. And then we sing an arrangement of The Angel Gabriel. This is an arrangement by Susan Labar. We actually recorded this arrangement in 2018 on our Christmas album. So if you want to hear it again, you can pick up a copy of that album. But The Angel Gabriel by Susan Labar. And then we end this section with the audience singing the carol, Lo, How a Rose Ere Blooming. And then after a concert that's been sort of very thoughtful about the various aspects of Christmas, we go to the fifth section, which I just call Joy Unbound. And this is where we're going to hear our composer in residence setting of the Sussex Carol. The congregation will sing the first Noel and Joy to the World. And then another just delightfully exciting song called Noel, Noel. It's from a larger work. This is by John Tavener, written in the 21st century, written within the last 10 or 15 years. It is like nothing you've heard before, I'm certain, but it's full of just joy and delight. You'll hear a constant refrain with organ and choir, and then when it gets to the verses, you'll hear the choir doing what might sound like stuttering as they start repeating words, repeating syllables on a string of lots of pitches and challenging rhythms, sort of all together in homophony. And it just creates this, it almost sounds itself like giggling to some degree. And I think that I expect and hope that what you'll hear in this piece is sort of the telling of the good news of Christmas in a way that's filled with just utter joy and buoyant delight. I've already mentioned it. In this section, we're going to sing the Sussex Carol, which then leads me to this moment where I'm excited to introduce you to our arranger for this Sussex Carol. And now I am so delighted to introduce our composer in residence, Dr. Keen Southard, whose works you will be delighted to hear for the next 2 years with Te Deum. Keen is one of those rare composers whose curiosity roams widely. Critics call him prolific and a terrific discovery, and it's easy to see why. His music moves comfortably from traditional to experimental, from sacred to secular, always guided by a conviction that art can change how we think, feel, and act in the world. He's written pieces that advocate for nonviolence, for environmental conservation, and for the kind of social imagination that builds communities. His career has taken him from Brazil, where he served as a Fulbright scholar studying music education, to residencies at places like the Copeland House, to fellowships in Austria, Hong Kong, and the Bennington Chamber Music Conference. He earned his doctorate in composition at the Eastman School of Music. What I've valued most so far in working with Keen is the generosity of his musical spirit. He writes with both intellect and heart, and he brings that same presence into collaboration. It's a joy to have him shaping new works for Te Deum, starting with the Sussex Carol you'll hear at our upcoming program, Carols of Old. And now I welcome Dr. Keen Southard. Keen, welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm so excited to be the composer in residence for Te Deum and get to write a bunch of new pieces for this fantastic group. Yeah.
Thank you. It's exciting to have you, and you'll now be our third composer in residence, and it's been a special thing to see how the relationship develops over time when we know that we're going to have a couple of years together and a half dozen pieces together to learn each other and play and experiment with things. Is that sort of the your thoughts going into this as well?
Yeah, I mean, I've never had this is my first composer in residence position, really, where I've been able to, yeah, I'm going to be able to develop that sort of sustained longer term collaboration and,
Mhm.
get to know you and the singers, almost everything else I've had has been, performed or commissioned has been once off, or maybe it's been once and then some years later we do another collaboration. But this over a 2 year period, um, yeah, is a new thing and a very exciting thing.
Excellent. Well, we too are very much looking forward to it. Let's turn to the Sussex Carol. So the choir has been hard at work on this piece. It is harmonically very virtuosic for the choir. Lots of extended harmonies, and we've had to really dig in and get those into our ear and into our voices in ways that we don't often need to work as hard. I'm curious, what has sparked your imagination when you began shaping the Sussex Carol for today?
Yeah, well, you had told me about this concert and given me a list of possible carols, that I could think about making a setting of. And the Sussex Carol, um, is one I've been familiar with, especially over the last year or two as a church music director myself. We've sung that at the last two um, Christmases with my choir. Um, and I wanted to write a lot of my choral music in the past has been slow tempo, very homophonic, homorhythmic, where everyone's sort of singing the syllables at
Mhm.
the same time. And I thought, I should do something that's faster and more energetic, and I can do some little experiments with rhythm as well. And especially having this group, I mean, I've never had the chance to write specifically for a professional choir this level before. So I thought this would be the Sussex Carol would be a good chance for me to try out some different things and make a
Mhm.
really fun, joyous setting for the first time. Yeah.
That's great. And I mentioned the virtuosity of the harmonies, but you mentioned that the you were trying to find not just right with homophonic rhythms. What I failed to mention is the virtuosity of the rhythmic setting. That there's these polyrhythms that the audience will sure to hear, and it could be perceived as mistakes. It's not. The choir is written with different rhythms, and I think what one will hear in this competing rhythmic structure, duples against triples, and more complicated than that even. What people are going to hear is the joy of this piece. That yeah, the joy of this text on Christmas night, all Christians sing to hear the news the angels bring. What I love about the polyrhythms is the joy that they exude, and this concept of on Christmas night, all Christians come together and sing. And the polyrhythms kind of remind me of, in a way, different factions of Christianity. That not all Christians, not all people think the same way, but sort of the central purpose, central meaning is the same, right? In Christmas, we sort of are celebrating the same thing, even if we do it in different ways or have some different disagreements about how we do it. I think those polyrhythms express that. Like we're all doing our best to express this as we can, and it's different, but all combined, it's sort of beautiful cacophony.
Yeah, I certainly didn't think of it that way, but I think that's a valid way to think about it. I mean, in some ways I thought about it uh, very much on a musical level. I start off with the melody, being presented in the traditional way, the da 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 da, and then is where the polyrhythms have where it just when you're like, oh, I recognize that tune, I start playing around with it, so you're still like, oh, it's the same thing, but oh, I hear how it's been altered and changed in a different way, right when I expected it to continue in the way I'm used to.
Oh, that leads me to another question. How did you navigate that tension between a beloved tune and your instinct for fresh musical language? Was it, yeah, how did you navigate that tension between those two?
Well, composers in the Western classical tradition have been doing this for, 1,000, plus years. You go back to in the Renaissance, using, for instance, so many composers use this popular song, the Lo Marmé, as
Mm,
basis of different compositions in masses, um, and of course, composers like Mozart wrote variations on what we know as Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, like always putting the composers have always taken melodies that already existed and played around with them, put them in different context, helping you hear them in a different way. Um, it's a way of connecting you to something that's familiar, but also showing you what else it can be, different possibilities for it. So, I mean, one model who I think about a lot, and I thought about a lot writing this piece, or is Percy Grainger, whose music I absolutely love. Um, he did all these folk song settings, and also with the joy. So many of them are like very, very joyful and exuberant, and um, essentially keeping the melody for the most part the same. I mean, sometimes he plays around with what the melody actually does too, but the context it's in, the harmonies, the rhythm, and he did plenty with choral music, but he's much more well known for his band music and things like that, and his piano.
sure.
But he has some wonderful choral music too. So I don't know. I didn't. It's sort of a natural thing to me, and then applying my own harmonic ideas, you know, to something like this. I did this actually similarly with another um, carol actually last year, and it was something I just sort of stumbled on playing around with Silent Night, which if you look at it in a hymnal is very, very simple harmonies. Um, for the music theory people, it's just one, four, and five chords the whole time. And I started, oh, can I make it a much more complex harmonic texture that takes it in different directions, has more dissonance, has, more complex harmonies. And I wrote this setting for organ doing that. And I was like, this is a lot of fun. I had a lot of fun just recontextualizing this familiar tune. So, of course, that is a very much slower tune, though. This is a much more faster, a very different sort of feel. Um, but it's a sort of natural thing for me. And I'm a pianist first. And so harmony for me of the different aspects of music, harmony, melody, rhythm, timbre, harmony is the one that like that got me into composing. Like I was interested in like cool chord progressions when I was a teenager, finding those, and so harmony and reharmonizing things is just something that sort of comes naturally to me, and exploring, yeah, more complex harmonies, not just your standard major and minor chords, but you know, adding more notes and all those sort of things, and having unexpected twists, unexpected ways that one chord resolves into another chord. I just love doing that stuff. And so, yeah.
This arrangement has a slew of unexpected uh, chord changes and releases from tension uh, to release to new kinds of tension. It's always sparkling and it's always interesting. It's always intriguing.
Mhm.
The way that
And
you've colored.
also it's very centered in one key, but then it keeps slipping into these other keys, but then slipping back to the main one, going off on these little detours. And you're like, my thought is, that the listener will go, whoa, we're kind of in a different place, but then all of a sudden, I find a smooth way, like a trap door, to get us back to where we started by the end of the melody. Mm.
It is sort of delightfully surprising how, yeah, the key shifts, and you sort of assume you're going to then live there for a while, and then you don't. You're right, sort of right back only sometimes a few measures later. You're
Mhm.
right back into the original key, and when you're not expecting it, it's full of so much charm, and I can't wait for our audience to get to hear this piece. Now, you mentioned Percy Grainger as being an influence here. You mentioned piano and harmony as being sort of a backbone of your style. I'm curious, are there any moments in this piece that you might consider, you might call like a personal compositional signature of yours?
Yeah, so that's a tricky thing to say in some ways because I try not to think too much about like if I sort of tell myself, "Oh, this is my style, this is the way I do things," then I'm sort of restricting myself and I never sort of want to do I want to always have like the ultimate sort of freedom to do whatever I want to do. But at the same time, there are things that I'm fascinated with, musical things that I'm fascinated with that I know I'm exploring and trying out in different ways. And two of those that I know that I really explore in this piece, one are glissandos, which is sliding the pitches. Um, and I think actually almost all of them go upwards, are upward slides, except the very end, the very last one goes down and brings it all back down. I just love the sound of where the pitch, yeah, just slides around. It's so different than, the difference between singing a scale, do, re, mi, and da, and getting all the frequencies, the microtones in between. It's just a completely different feel for me. And I'm really attracted to that sound. I've been exploring it, and some instruments can't really do it. A piano can't do that thing. I mean, you can do a kind of glissando, but it is a discrete one. You slide your hand across the keyboard, but you get, C, B, E, or C, D, E. You get the notes of the scale. You don't get the notes in between the notes. With string instruments, with some other instruments, you can explore those more. Trombone, you know, and I love that. And then the other one um, is this harmony that I've been exploring a lot, which is it's a major and a minor chord at the same time, which it's hard to explain how that sounds without demonstrating it, but um, it's this mix of it has a very sharp dissonance in it between the minor third and the major third. Um, and I found I've really come to love this harmony thanks to especially two composers that use it a lot, Gerald Finzi, whose music I absolutely adore, and the Polish composer Andrzej Panufnik, who used that chord extensively. And I'm like, I just love the way they used it. I was like, I want to see what I can do with that chord too. And so that chord keeps coming back, especially and every verse in this at the same place it comes back near the end of the verse, which is also where I extend that moment every single time. It gets one beat longer. That note gets held longer and longer each time. So those things I know, yeah, are maybe part of my becoming, my favorite sort of little signature things, at least at the moment. Yeah.
I think that's wonderful, and all of those things are going to stick out for our audience is going to hear that the glissandi has been really an interesting thing for the ensemble to work on because you make this point about all the microtones in between, but what we want to what at least today and what we've been trying to avoid is several microtones at the same time. So getting all six sopranos to slide at the sort of exact same
Mhm.
rate over an octave, and then at one point over a tenth, yeah, an octave and a third as well, and sort of so that we are getting the microtones, but only one microtone sort of at any given millisecond. The ensemble is working really hard to even that out, and it's gonna come off in a really spectacular way.
Yeah.
And your point about the cross relations, also the major minor, that it does sound very dissonant, but it also you use it in this special moment. I remember these words when we sing echoes of his voice, and this moment it echoes. We hear this
Mhm.
cross relation, and yes, dissonant, but it's really turning into just sparkle, to shimmer and sparkle rather than something. Dissonance is sort of a negative, but it's not that. It actually kind of opens up and sparkles in this different kind of way. And again, going back to my earlier sort of trope about people coming to celebrate Christmas from a variety of faith traditions, or sort of personal beliefs, that even that cross relation is people really disagreeing, is this major or minor, and yet the combination of that, these two differing chords, create beauty.
Yeah. Yeah, dissonance, I think, yeah, it's labeling dissonance as ugly and consonance as beautiful is not the way. There's a lot of beauty. I mean, well, it depends on how you use the dissonance, right? I mean, dissonance can be ugly, but there can also be so much beauty in dissonance. You know, if it's used right, if it's done in the right way. I suppose, yeah, is the way to think.
So I'm certain that our audience is going to find these various techniques you've used surprising. I'm curious, while you were composing this piece, did anything surprise you along the way of that journey?
Yeah, the one thing I noticed looking back on this, well, actually, when I decided to use it, I thought this is something I usually don't do, but I think it fits here, which is having this piece actually has repeat signs where you actually repeat a literal section, which I can't think of any other piece of mine where I've actually used literal repeats. Maybe I've used them in somewhere it's like you repeat one measure or like one part repeats something over and over, but to have everyone just, okay, go back and do that whole section again. And there are, like, for instance, there is one spot where I do that, but then I add something on the second time through. So I make a little bit of change, but usually I don't like repeating things exactly, especially a whole chunk of music. But as I was writing this, it sort of has like 5 verses. We go through the melody 5 different times, and each verse is very different. And especially at the tempo, this faster tempo and all these different harmonic shifts and rhythmic shifts and things, I just sort of felt like it was moving through those too quickly. And we needed to it was worth it to repeat it and experience that again because it just could be a kind of overload. And so, yeah, this is one of maybe maybe the only work of mine, at least for a very long time, that actually has literal repeat signs in it.
I agree with you completely about the value of the repeat, and especially in this piece, that sort of as you said it, that each section is so rhythmically and harmonically interesting. I was going to use the word dense, and that's not quite right. I don't. It's not dense, but it's surprising. And the first time, I can almost imagine you just sort of getting dizzy about what's going on, and then the second time allows you to hear it. I think more, just be able to take it in more. That it just sometimes takes two passes. The same as you read some poetry of Shakespeare, and you tend to read those sentences more than once to make sure you really grasp the meaning. It's kind of the same thing here, and for
Yeah.
the singers even, that it has been such harmonically and rhythmically virtuosic music for us to learn that getting second passes even within has been great for the rehearsal process and even the performance process. To like, we've spent so much effort on these 32 bars. Let's do it again.
Yeah. And it's repeats with even the words are the same during the repeat too. So it's not just, oh, which happens a lot in certain types of music of repeat the music but change the words. No, this is exactly the same words. It's just getting to hear it again because it's you need to hear it again to digest it a little more. I mean, it's a little bit similar to, I mean, when I think about repeat signs in music, I think like, oh, like a Mozart sonata or a symphony or something where you repeat that whole opening section. And a lot of people don't in performance don't do that anymore anyway. But back in Mozart's time, there were no recording. Like this is like the only time you might get to hear that piece in your life. And so yeah, it makes sense to like actually hear it again and to sort of digest it and get to understand it a little deeper. But now in the age of recordings and stuff, it's like in some ways I'm like, yeah, repeats don't make a lot of sense. But here I was like, I think I need it. Yeah, it was surprising.
I think it was exactly the right choice. And I thank you for those repeats, and I think our audience will as well. Keen, I am so thrilled for our audience to hear the first piece you're writing for us, the Sussex Carol, and really delighted about the next 2 years that we're going to continue to craft pieces together. Thank you for joining us on a journey, on a musical compositional journey.
Yes, of course. Yeah. It's always a it's always quite a journey composing the piece myself, and then it begins its second sort of life, right? Of the journey of the rehearsals and the performance, and then hopefully a life after that as well. Hopefully more performances
Well,
beyond.
and then there is that important relationship of composer and conductor. You know, the our audience listening to this right now already got to hear us uh, describe two very different ways that you and I were conceiving of the polyrhythms. That you were thinking of it sort of rhythmically, technically, musically, and I, as a conductor, have to take these musical ideas and sort of technical ideas and make them like give them meaning. And like for myself, you know, I didn't write this piece, but I have to own it as if it's my own child. And so as I'm studying these pieces of music, I'm finding the things to fall in love with. And I'm ascribing meaning to things because we want to present a meaningful performance. And it's not that the piece doesn't already inherently have lots of meaning in it, but I just need to personalize it as a conductor and as an ensemble. And so I look at those things and I'm like, and I could see these challenging polyrhythms and say, what's the point? Well, it's my job as conductor to come up with a point, like figure out, give it a why. And so that's what we were talking about before. My why on these polyrhythms are sort of different faiths, all trying to celebrate the Christmas story and the spirit of Christmas in their own way, and that uh, dissonant or cacophonous collection of celebrations creates its own kind of beauty.
Yeah. Well, this is exactly what a composer wants out of, because we can't make the music ourselves. We need someone who believes in it, who takes it on just like you're saying, like as it like your own child, takes that sort of responsibility and that deep relationship and understanding and care for it to bring it to life.
It
Otherwise, it
takes
just sits in the drawer and no one else gets to
Well, and
experience.
it just takes so much trust, right? The conductor has to trust that he's going to be that they're going to be presented with a piece that uh, has enough there to give it lots of whys to inspire them. But then the composer probably has to give the most trust and has created this thing, but actually has no say over how the audience hears it, like how it actually comes out in the end. And so building that trusting relationship, and ours is still very new, but there was immediately trust when we first started talking almost a year ago about the potential of this collaboration and this residency. I think there was immediate trust there, and that's why we moved forward on it. And I think with every piece we do together, I'm excited for how that's going to continue to build and grow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for what you've written for us and for joining us today to share about the process. I know the audience is going to appreciate hearing from you right now, and I know they're really going to love hearing your piece next week.
Well,
Keen, thank you so very much.